questions you might have and to stay connected with you moving forward. That's why I've put my email address there. And I really hope to receive some feedback from you. This is my first presentation. And I want to be accessible should you have any questions or thoughts after today. I see some hands up. I don't know if the chair or somebody else wants to call on people, both in terms of their names and all that.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you. I will do so. I'm just going to, since I'm the president, I'm allowing myself the first question, and that is, well, congratulations. This was fantastic. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing. I'm just wondering why. My first question is North America only. And yeah, well, let's ask that question. I think this, with especially partnering with Rotarians, and you will get support from this club and from wherever else you go. I was also wondering, why don't we do this worldwide?
Right. So two things. First of all, I almost said this during my presentation, but I didn't want to slow down the flow. Thank you very much for what you just said. I found myself many times during this presentation just getting goosebumps, and I have heard this many, many times, and I wrote this myself. So jack.org is Canadian. It's across Canada. We now have that partnership I mentioned with the US, and I can get more information for you. But what I do know is that before COVID, our executive team and youth leaders attended conferences across the world and learned best practices from organizations across the globe, and also shared best practices. It is a great question. I will take it forward so that I will never answer a question I don't know the answer to, but it is needed across the world, and it was founded here, and we are doing our best to share those best practices. And I'm sure, speaking on behalf of the organization, we are more than happy to see this go global. I've heard that in the short time I was there.
Okay, thank you. So I have 5 hands raised, and I think we should stick to the 5. Paul Elsley, then John Bosch, then Marie Miller, then Liz Good, and then Bernie. Paul?
Wow.
Thanks, Elsie. Naguib, thanks very much. I spent my professional career teaching high school students, particularly grade 11 and 12, and I know that transition from high school to university can be a very traumatic one. I'm wondering, and your segue, the story you told us about living near that residence Don leads to my question, which is, does jack.org train residents Dons in colleges and universities? Because I think that is such an important piece.
Great question. Thank you, Paul. First of all, this gentleman I spoke about is a high school teacher. The folks that we have who are those 3,000 volunteers across the country in all those chapters, they go and speak in high schools as much as they do at universities. So especially the grades 11 and 12. When I heard about jack.org, as I said, I really wanted to join the organization. It took a while because I wanted to find the right fit. But I knew this is how I wanted to end my career, and it was perfect. When I mentioned it to our daughter, who is 19 years old, at the dinner table, and she is now in her second year of university, she went, "Oh, Daddy, that's so cool." And I went, "You've heard of jack.org?" And she had. She actually, even though we didn't know it, was a member of the chapter at her high school in Toronto, and is now a member of the University of Toronto. In terms of Dons, just so I'm not forgetting that part, yes, they are one of our first targets. A lot of them are those volunteers, and the Be There certificate's #1 target is those people.
Thank you. John Bosch.
Yes, great presentation. I'm also a former high school teacher. I'm a little bit confused. I hear you say there are chapters in high schools. And they make presentations to students. If there's a student who feels that they have mental health problems,
Yes.
do they approach? Can they approach the students in the chapters, and can they get help that way? Where's the relationship?
Right. So we are not there to help as much as to inform and teach and connect. When you have time, if you just go back to that Be There video, the 5 golden rules, the last one is to get them support. Again, I forgot to mention something. In my spare time for the last few years, I've gone to do what I wanted to do when I was in university, but my mom thought it was not an appropriate job, which is to become a teacher. I decided to do that part-time. I am fluent in French. There's a huge shortage of French teachers. And I worked part-time for very little pay because I'm not certified at the school board. When COVID began, I decided to start teaching French on Zoom for free to all of our neighbors' kids. A, to keep them busy, and B, to give the parents a break. That became very quickly a, can you please teach my child? They are different ages, from really little people to adults and everything in between. I may have misspoken. I want to explain the difference between a chapter and a talk. The chapters can be in universities, they can be in high schools, but they are also in communities. The people who go into high schools or go into universities to speak are those volunteers who are trained in doing a JAC talk. A JAC talk is quite similar to what I've just done. I've had to go through about 60 hours of training to get to you today. That's what these folks do. Whether it's a counselor in the school, the student, our website, if anybody proactively wants a JAC talk at their school, they reach out and we provide it. If an individual person reaches out to us, we also help that person one-on-one. That's the whole Be There concept. It's listen, say what you see, etc. So yeah, I mean, although the numbers are overwhelming in terms of our presence, clearly we don't have a chapter in every high school and in every university across the country. And COVID, of course, has affected that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Marie, can you unmute yourself? You're next.
Yes, thank you. Naguib, I don't even know where to start. I'm just really moved by this presentation. I was working at Queen's when Jack took his life and many others around the few years.
That was a bad year.
Yeah, it was a very bad year. And I did know, I worked with the parents of one of the other kids and was really pleased to see, you know, the Bell Chair in mental health was established at Queen's, and I just felt like the conversation started and it started to build at Queen's, other institutions across Canada, and talk about the need to remove the stigma. I am so impressed that Jack's parents started this organization, and wow, I had no idea how it had grown. Really, really impressive. I made a note because my kids struggle, particularly my daughter. I've never seen so many kids struggling. I can hardly name one of my daughter's friends that aren't struggling. And I mean, to the point of addictions to self-harm, committing, you know, attempting to commit suicide, and the list goes on. So this is what I'm dealing with personally. So I'm definitely going to look into taking that Be There certificate. I'm actually working with Addictions and Mental Health Center, a family resource center, and attending my first support group tonight. So it's so good to see that there's so many resources out there. The one thing, and I'm sure Jack.org is looking at this, but the one thing I would say is, for me, there's such a tie between technology and particularly social media and our kids' mental health. And it gets me to the point of anger. And I said to many people, if I had the time and the resources now, I would start advocating and talking to parents and making them aware about what these devices are doing to our generation. And it's really sad. And I think we need to all step up, and we need to be aware, and we need to do something about it.
Marie, first of all, thank you. And yet again, I had goosebumps. Jack's parents are amazing people. The culture at Jack.org is amazing in terms of my colleagues, in terms of the support I need or they need. Ideas are always welcome. So I told you that I don't know very much yet. I know what I know. I know that your idea is brilliant and very real. And I will bring it forward in case it's not on the strategic plan. I can't imagine, as you said, it is not. We only have one child, so she's 19. She went through her last year of high school as COVID began. She started university as COVID began. Sitting in this room, I'm actually sitting in her bedroom right now, in case you're wondering. My home office is such a mess, and with Google Meets, you can blur the background. And I realized as soon as I turned on my video, I can't do that here. So too bad. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, technology and all these devices and social media are definitely one of the many things that affect mental health for young people. Certainly COVID does. As I said at some point in my presentation, this is so needed, but now more than ever. And I do know, although we are blessed so far as we know, that our daughter's doing fine. Many of her friends were not. That is why she joined the Jack.org chapter at her school. It is amazing to see how comfortable she and her friends have become because of their involvement with Jack.org in discussing mental health very openly and with no stigma. The hardest thing I had to do was in January of 2020 to tell her my story before I kind of went viral with it. As I said, it's now on YouTube. And now I understand why she reacted the way she did, which was hugely supportive and very understanding. It's because she learned those things through Jack.org. I didn't know that.
Thank you for that. Next up, Elizabeth. Good.
Hi, thanks so much for that talk. It's amazing. You keep saying you get chills. I've had a lump in my throat the whole time you were talking. I too suffer from mental health issues. I suffer from anxiety and depression, and just recently been diagnosed with ADHD. I always tell people, because I don't want, I want to stop that stigma, but that's been the way it has been all my life, and you just can't talk about it. And it's just, people are embarrassed to even hear it. So it's amazing what you guys are doing. I have had suicide in my family. My son-in-law died by suicide. So I know how that feels and how impactful it is on people's lives, many people's lives. The question I was going to ask, I think you've answered. I think Marie brought it up, is that Is it, I was just going to ask, is it worse now? Are these kids suffering more? But I guess from what you've said, it's social media, it's a pandemic, it's all these things, the pressure on kids now. So that was my
Yep.
question.
100%, and all the stats that we have show that. And you know, we put out reports, the Youth Voice report, our annual report, all sorts of information on our website or through webinars, and we talk about that. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your story as well. And I'm sorry about your son-in-law. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Bernie, you can unmute yourself.
My good friend Mike will ask our question.
Okay, there's a bunch of you there. Okay.
Just two of us.
Just two. Of us.
Okay, it looks like a huge boardroom. Anyway.
It is. It's massive. No.
Okay.
Anyways, so thank you for the talk. You know, and I have not heard of this before until today, which is great. Of course, I was in Kingston. I've been a lifelong Kingstonian, so I was aware of Jack when that happened back then. But I guess my question is, and Elizabeth just touched on it, was, you know, yeah, we're seeing all kinds of reports that, you know, the numbers are going up. My question is, are you seeing people using jack.org incrementally? Are those numbers going up? Is there still a stigma? And the other part of my question was, if you have these groups at the schools, are people like, you know, if I have a problem and I want to go and talk to Bernie about it at my school, a lot of kids are reluctant to do that, right? Because I don't want to tell my friend about it because he might tell somebody else and it gets around.
Yep.
So that's kind of a two-part question.
Can I ask a little bit more to your question,
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah.
Along the line there, with poverty and prosperity, do you have any statistics that would identify whether there's more of that driven by poverty versus prosperity, or is there any difference?
Okay,
that's
so
another question.
I tried to take some notes here. Yes, the numbers are going up, partly because the problem is so much worse these days, partly because people know about us. And so, you know, when I said we've reached 17,000 people so far this year, that's in 6 months, by the way. I'm still trying to get my head around. I grew up in the finance world. I'm still trying to get my head around the fact that our fiscal year end is June 30th. It's attached to the school year. Yep. And the stigma is still there. I felt it when I spoke back in 2020, even as an adult. It's hard. Not everybody is open. Young people are more open. You're talking about, use the example of you and Bernie, you know, and how tough it is to go talk to him as a young person. That is exactly why we exist, to facilitate those conversations, to teach people how to have those conversations. When you are done, if you're one of these kids listening to a Jack Talk, you'll know what to do. And people keep talking about it. You can watch some of those Jack Talks on our website. They're different than mine. I can't give a Jack Talk because kids will not relate to me. The kinds of talks I give, much like today, or the one that is on YouTube about my story, are for a different reason. But kids talking to kids is how we break that stigma. In terms of poverty and prosperity, you know, some of you may check out my career on LinkedIn or just whatever, or we may stay in touch. After working in the private sector for many years, I switched to the not-for-profit public sector world in a number of sectors. The most recent before joining Jack.org was the settlement sector, New Canadians. And I know you live in Kingston, but for those of you who know Toronto, and there are the same kinds of communities in Kingston, there are some communities in Toronto that really the prosperity is horrible. Yes, that is something that we are looking at. Jack.org, as part of its new strategy, is looking at more diversity in terms of who we reach. Right now, girls are reached more than boys. White people are reached more than any other race or color of persons. And the LGBTQ community is reached, but there are a lot of people who aren't being reached. Language barriers, prosperity barriers, etc. We are putting that together. There will be programs that are clearly targeting those who we're not reaching right now, because yes, the mental health issues, you don't compare anybody to anybody. I don't want to say they're worse. I mean, you heard Marie's story. They're different, and they are as bad. And yes, if you look at certain studies, they're worse, because you've got 12 people living in an apartment, going through COVID, all needing the internet with 2 computers to do online school and work, etc.
Okay,
It's
well,
on the-
thank you. I've got we are way over schedule. I know Sean has been waiting patiently to ask the question. Sean, if you can make it quick.
I can, and it's been alluded to a few times, and Paul has it in his chat here.
Okay.
We know that research tells us that kids go to kids first. They don't go to
Yes.
adults, they don't go to counselors, they go to their peers. So I'm
Yes.
curious, because the peer-to-peer model is a real interesting new area of study. And I'm wondering how you guys are dealing with risk management. You know, things like insurance and accountability and a liability, especially for your peers that may be under the age of 18.
So, Sean, a great question for which I do not know the answer, and I will find out. I did say that we don't give advice. We just listen. We're there. When I say we, I mean our young people. And they all have a lot of support and follow-up from the jack.org staff. The majority of staff are not people like me. They are actually, like, of those 74 employees, most of them work in what we call the programs department, which is all of those different things that I showed you. That's a great question. I will find that out. I'm not sure, again, the folks that I've been dealing with thus far, to get to today, I'll just email you back and then I'll let you disperse the information. But again, my email address is really easy, naguib@jack.org.